welcome back to the How to Podcast series. Now, it's great when you have a guest come on your show on Dad Space, and then they come back. So I've done something right because they've come back, which is great. Tracy's here, and she has had like multiple podcasts. A new one just came out for everyone to enjoy. We'll have all the links and more about the story about these. And we'll talk about the other podcast because I think it's a great podcast and it's something you should go check out as well. Tracy's here on the How to Podcast series as my guest co-host. Tracy, welcome to the How to Podcast series.
Hi, Dave. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Right. And, technology's fun.
Yes.
Correct? Right. So it's taken us a little while to get connected here. Thanks, Zoom, for making our day fun. And computers,
exactly.
Thank you for all you do to frustrate us on a regular basis. But here we are. And it's
router, thanks for connecting me automatically to the outside instead of inside. Like, it's all good.
So Tracy set up a new IT business. So if you need any help with IT, reach out to Tracy. She'll help you. She charges a lot of money, but she will definitely help you get connected to the internet. And she's great. So Tracy, tell everybody about your 2 podcasts. Can you tell us about your show?
I have 2 former podcasts and 1 new one.
Oh, there you go. So 3.
Yeah, I have 3 podcasts. Come on. They're all still up. And so my first podcast was called Essential Stepmom. Mm-hmm. And that was connected to my online coaching business. I have also a Facebook group called Essential Stepmom for, surprise, stepmoms. And that was kind of a weird thing. I won't go into all the details of how that started, but I just realized that I wanted to share with other women my experiences and advice, and also from my deep background in alternative medicine, where I've used a lot of things that are helpful for stress and anxiety and all kinds of other things that, tricks that I had learned in my 30 years as a homeopathic practitioner that had helped me a lot, helped my family a lot. And so that is a podcast that has over 100,000 downloads at this point. So that became quite a popular thing. So there's about 115 or so episodes that I did. So I mean, there aren't, maybe I've put up a new one or 2 in the last couple of years, but I really shifted out of that audience more towards the husbands of those women who were in my audience, just realizing that a lot of the problems that I was trying to address from the stepmom side really and truly belong to the dad of the family, who is, if the woman is the stepmom, he is the parent of those children in the household. And a lot of the family dynamic issues are really his to solve finally. And just thinking that the guys have less resources available to them, which is still true. So, and I ended up really focusing on the topic of parental alienation, which is, it's actually a huge thing, and people don't ever put a name to it, maybe, of what's happening in their home, but there is a name for it. So I did a podcast for dads that has 50 or so episodes. That was really for them. So the way that I did it was kind of a mixture of sometimes I would have guests on, and sometimes I would just do solo episodes, because they were it was a teaching platform for me. There was always a theme or a focus that each episode would have. And it was really almost like doing coaching over the, as a podcast. Yeah. So, the stepmom ones tended to be longer, a little bit longer format. And for the dads, I decided quite purposefully to make them shorter. Just thinking about the audience, and I wasn't looking for people who are looking to just kind of listen to something while they're driving to work. right? Like these were going to be informational, like keep a notepad beside you and whatever. So I didn't want them to be super long. And sometimes when I would interview somebody, I would then split it up into 2 or 3 podcasts. So at that time, I was using Anchor, our dearly departed friend Anchor, that was like so amazing.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was so easy to use, and you put the music right on. You just click and find the music that you want. And man, it was easy. I loved it. So I would pre-record an intro, like a series intro and outro.
Yep.
And I would put the music on, and then those would just sit in my library. And you could tag those, attach them onto the episode. But what I figured out how to do, again, it was so easy with Anchor, because what I hate is editing. I don't know about you, but like that's the part that I dislike, is the editing.
Yeah.
So I was sort of pre-editing. It was like pre-digesting your food or whatever. I would write out my episode into 5, 6, 10 little like long paragraphs, let's say, of each 1 to 2 minutes. And they could be bullet points or they could be written out. And mostly I prefer my style is to write it in advance and just say it as if I'm talking. Like if I'm talking to you, I can always think of what I want to say. If I'm talking into the void, I have a really hard time with that when I'm recording a solo episode. So I would write it out for myself, and then I would record the little sections. And when Anchor would prompt me and, to save it as something, I would save like episode 21.1 and then episode 21.2 and episode 21.3. So that if something happened, like I stumbled over my words or the dog barked or whatever, I was only losing the 1 or 2 minutes. And I wouldn't have to ever edit anything afterwards. So I might have to record one little section 3 times, but then it's done. And so then when it would come time to assemble the episode, you would just click the little plus and put them all in order or reorder them or whatever. And then you drop in the intro and the outro.
Done.
And you're done.
Yeah.
And I loved that because it's the editing part that makes me crazy. I get all bent out of shape sometimes about like taking out the long pauses and stuff, which I do from time to time if I'm editing an interview and somebody's really thinking for 10 seconds or something, like nobody needs to have those long pauses. If there's video and you can see someone's facial expression, it's not a big deal, but it bothers me when there's a long pause. So, and as a listener, as a podcast listener, I don't enjoy it's just me. I know lots of people listen to just sort of conversational podcasts, but I like for there to be a point, and I like for people to get to the point,
Yeah, that'd be kind of nice. Yeah.
And so like I don't like it when it's too rambly and it gets off track or something. So if I'm editing an interview, I might edit out something that was a sideline that I think doesn't really add to the core of what we're talking about. But anyway, I loved doing it that way, and it was super easy and super fast. And, it didn't take me long to write the episodes and then just record, boot. Like it takes you as long to record as it does ostensibly to listen to it, and drop in the pre-recorded intro and outro and boom. So now we're on Riverside because I don't know all the chain of events, but Anchor got bought by Spotify, and Spotify is now, maybe they own Riverside or vice versa. I don't know.
Yeah.
And obviously there's way, way, way more functionality, but it's also a way bigger learning curve for me. Like I just don't find it easy and fast and seamless like the way it used to be.
Yeah.
So when it was time to do a new podcast, because my business has morphed once again, I went from, stepmoms to dads and parental alienation coaching. That all led me more into the realm of personal development because, again, it was through my well, through my homeopathic experience and my, as let's say, as a healer, which it has been the bulk of my activity for the last 25 or 30 years. I started getting more and more interested in just the realm of personal development, and whether we call that energetic or spiritual growth or whatever, right? But those were the pieces that these guys needed, and they needed to work because this is such a frustrating situation that they're in, and because the 3D tools don't get you very far in terms of like the family court system and the therapy system, which isn't set up at all for this kind of like, therapists generally don't understand the dynamic of this at all. They really needed to up their game and be able to work on a much more energetic level to solve this problem. So I got into the more, I'm going to say esoteric for lack of a better word. It's not really, but there's science is now quantum science. Like we are no longer stuck in the Newtonian model of the universe that is very mechanistic. We know now that quantum means at the subatomic level, but beneath the level of molecules, the behavior of reality at its most fundamental level. Like I'm really, really, really interested in that. And so, to make a long story short, I started another podcast, which is called Limitless, which is about exploring the frontiers of human consciousness and potential. And I interview people who work in those realms. I interview people who have done or experienced something which would have been beyond what they thought was possible, or outside of the realm of what our experience till now has shown us that is possible. I'm really interested in interviewing ultra athletes who sort of push their physical body to do things which are, thought to be impossible. Running 5 days without sleeping, or running 1,000 miles without stopping, or like things that are kind of insane, and yet people can do them. And I really believe in this principle of the I don't know if you call it, some people call it the 100 monkeys, or the 4-minute mile, but like when someone achieves at the next level, that really trickles down. It's available to everyone who wants to engage with that frequency. Like then everybody can do it. Like when there's a breakthrough, it becomes available on a very wide scale. And I just find that completely fascinating because of how fast things are going now, and because of all of the breakthroughs in all of the fields that are happening. And well, because of how fast everything is moving and changing, I think it serves us to dip into this well of expanded potential and figure out what we can do and what kind of legacy we can create in our still limited days on the planet. Because we can project ourselves also into the future through our legacy and figure out now how to make an impact in 200 years from now. Like, I just find that really cool. So that's the Limitless podcast, but that's been done by a whole totally different process.
Okay, talk about the new process. What's happening? What are you doing?
Well, the new process is that I just wanted to cry when I looked at but like, I am not a techie person. I mean, I suppose I am compared to how I was 8 years ago or whatever, but I don't love being mired in like tech stuff and learning it and having things not work and like I said, the editing and all of that doesn't suit me. So I had been working with a guy who was doing social media posting for me. He was interviewing me every week on his radio show and then cutting little video sections to put on my social media and LinkedIn and YouTube and whatever. And at some point, I said that I wanted to do a new podcast. And he said, well, I have a whole team assembled now of like VAs who work for me. And I'm like an agency, and we could produce your podcast.
Nice.
So I was like, yes, like let's do it, But it's like podcast by committee takes forever.
Mm.
This really was like the first podcast I did, it was like, figure it out, record one, boom, like it's up the same day,
Yeah.
This was more, okay, I need a whole bunch in the can so that we can start rolling them out. And I'm not going to be panicked about having new interviews or like I need to be set up for a month or two in advance.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do like a launch party on LinkedIn, and we're also going to roll them out on YouTube. So there will be a YouTube channel, a YouTube podcast channel that will have all the same material on it, as another, because this is all pointing towards my, let's say, consultancy. Like I'm a coach and a mentor for people who want to have these kind of breakthroughs, because I have, in my holistic medicine business, developed a technology that actually helps shift consciousness so that we can have these kind of breakthrough experiences and create the more expansive legacy that really lights us up. That's a thing that I've created and that I'm teaching at the moment and seeing clients and wanting to promote to people who will make the highest use of it.
Yeah.
So my podcast is meant to attract sort of high achieving people who have maybe hit a plateau in their growth, or business leaders who are interested in what could be possible for them, in people who are starting to think about their legacy, and that it really lights them up to have that kind of purpose in their life, as well as I'm really keen to be working with functional medicine doctors and high level healing arts practitioners who already have tools and programs that they use for people, but which are still, no matter how much they're looking at root causes of health issues, you're not dealing with root causes if you're not working at the quantum level.
Right.
It's still like working with food and nutrition and supplements and minerals and vitamins and oils and all of those things. That is like, it's way better than just waiting till you're sick and taking medicine.
Right.
But it's still a pretty mechanistic view of how human beings work, that you're deficient in something, you take more of it, or you take something to, help you extract better the nutrients or whatever. We're still not working at the level of programming where there is a program running in the, at the foundation, which is completely energetic, right? You don't fix a bug in your laptop with a miniature tweezers, it's code.
Yeah.
And if we're not working at the level of coding, you're not really working at the root causes. So I'm very keen to work with the kind of doctors and healers who are very skilled at getting at root causes as far as they can go in their model, and giving them a way to really open up this energetic level. And just, I think they would see an incredible shift in the speed that they can work at with people, because the coding is now cooperating with what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So now I have a podcast that has a producer, and I record it on his Zoom link so that he has a 1080p, whatever, he goes through a service that's a higher resolution than what I have.
Yeah.
So we record it on his link. And so whenever I have a guest, I send the link that, opens his computer, and he's the one who does that. I have music that was composed especially for me, and this is so special,
Nice.
by a cousin. His name is Danny Columbi, and he is a music producer who does video and movie music. He's been doing that for years. And I had tried to buy a little snippet of music to use. And I mean, it was cool, and I thought it suited what I wanted to do, but they wanted like $1,000 to license this little piece of music.
Wow.
And I don't have, it's not a big deal, like it's not a big podcast. I don't have sponsorship, or there's no money coming in. It was just more money than I wanted to spend.
Yeah.
And my cousin kindly offered to just put something together for me, which he could do in a few minutes. And then I recorded my little intro, the series intro, and he did the voiceover with the music.
Nice.
And we did that for the intro and the outro. And then I kind of switched what I've been doing for the interviews. So what I used to do with the previous podcast was that I would do an introduction to each episode and then an outro to each episode. So the introduction, I would talk about the problem maybe that was being elaborated, that this guest was going to address. And then afterwards, I would talk very specifically about what the guest had explained or suggested or whatever, and really make sure that the points were coming home about, like if I had a financial expert on, for instance, then maybe they had not said everything in plain language about how this was going to fit into the blended family situation or whatever it might be. So I was doing those bookends at either end. And for this podcast, I take a break in the middle. So I record something that says, we'll be back in a minute with my guest, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that leaves me open to potentially having sponsorship at some point.
Good. That's smart. So
there's always a break there. And for now, it's just empty. And I got that idea from, it was either Michael Lewis or Malcolm Gladwell or somebody on that whole Pushkin network of podcasts, which I love.
Yeah.
And I would notice that they were almost always empty. Like even for a big name, many hundreds of thousands of listeners, like there are not paid breaks. They do it at the beginning often, but they recorded in those paid break spots that, haven't been filled. And I thought, well, that's okay. That's an okay thing to do, that it's empty. Like nobody needs to hear, so that was where I kind of got that little idea. So I take a little break and then I have my own 4 or 5 minutes where I talk about my process and my technology.
Good.
And how it applies to what the person has been talking about. And then I say, and now let's go back to the interview. And that I do that afterwards. So that's a piece of editing. Like I have to listen to the recording and find the appropriate place. Yeah. But then I don't physically do the splicing. I mean, I'm talking about it as if I had to literally take a razor blade and on a tape. Like I am old enough to know about that. But no, like even the tools that I use, like I'm not great at it. It's not fast and easy for me. All of those video audio editing tools. So I just tell my producer and his team, I give them the minute and second where I want the cuts or what to remove. And then we record separately this little intro or the little interval thing, insert. Mm-hmm. And they stick it in and put everything together. And then it gets dropped into my Spotify podcaster podcast. Mm-hmm. It comes up as a new episode that's a draft. Yep. And they are generating show notes by AI. It's not a transcript. It's like a précis of what the episode is about. And sometimes I use it and sometimes I don't. I drop in the bio information that the host has sent me. And then I click publish when I'm ready. Like, I mean, they've done all the audio is prepared, and I just fix up the show notes how I want them.
Nice.
And then I publish. So like, obviously I'm paying somebody to do that part of the work for me, but it's like it feels like a big relief to not have to worry about that. So it took long. When I say like it's like podcast by committee or whatever, like it was 4 or 5 months of working on it before we got to launch.
Wow. So
there was always something that wasn't ready or didn't get done, or there was a misunderstanding, or I had to, yeah.
So that time that you were doing your own editing, what have you replaced that time now that you have a team? What can you focus on instead of editing?
Or what should I be focusing on?
Should you? Yeah, should. Yeah. Okay.
How should I be using that? Well, yeah, all the other parts of my business. I mean, it just gets swallowed up. Like I said before, it was really so fast that it didn't take a lot. Like I could get a podcast episode out from like concept to publish in an hour.
Yeah.
Like it would take me maybe half an hour to write it, maybe an hour at most to write. Yeah. And then half an hour, 40 minutes to record, and then whatever. So I am still having to record with guests.
Yeah.
I'm still having to do that. And I'm still having to write the insert part. So, this is saving me time that I was not spending before because the tech was so easy, and it would be costing me a lot more time now. That's kind of the truth of it. But certainly it's a huge load off to have somebody else doing that.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that. And I don't know if I would have done it coming in now, because I'm a sort of do-it-yourself person. Like, I'll just do this myself.
Yeah.
And I probably would have struggled with things along, and maybe I just would have figured it out and, spent the 15 or 20 hours figuring everything out and then just gone ahead and done it myself. But it sort of fell into my lap because Neil Haley was already working for me, doing something kind of like this with interviews and clips and whatever. And so it just kind of fell into my lap and was a possibility because I already knew it. I don't know if I would have gone searching for someone to do that for me.
Yeah.
And it helped a lot that I'd already been working with him for a year or a year and a half, and he knows my business and understands what I'm trying to do. So that was a help too.
Yeah. And for the people listening that were part of Anchor when it switched to Spotify, and now Riverside's part of it and all that, you mentioned the music. The music all disappeared that we were all using. Yeah. So my Dad's Space podcast was a track through Spotify for podcasters, Anchor. And that was the theme of my show. Like every episode had the same music. And when they decided to switch over to Riverside as a recording option for Anchor/Spotify for podcasters, I lost access to my music. I had no more music. So I actually did the research and I found the site where all the music came from that went to Spotify. That was a free option for us to use. It's called Blue Dot Sessions.
Okay.
And that's the complete library of every song that you could use in the editing part that you were talking about. Blue Dot Sessions. And they have all the music, which is great. And I reached out to them and I'm like, I found you, because I found my Dad's Space theme song. I wanted to not get in trouble for using a song that was no longer available through Spotify for podcasters, Anchor, because they took it away. And I still want to use the song. So I tracked them down and I actually asked them, like, there's a lot of people looking for your music now that this is no longer an option. Do you have some kind of way that we can save some money as we come over? Because it's a paid service, right? They pay their artists that record the music.
Okay.
And they actually gave me a little discount code, which I was so excited. But I think I'm paying like less than $10 a month. And I have access to all of the songs.
Oh, great.
That was there. And you can go in and tweak the songs a little bit. You can actually play with them. and
Nice.
use them. Like you want more piano and less drums, you could do all that stuff. So I like editing. I'm kind of your nemesis. I love doing
Oh
editing.
yeah.
That's kind of my fun thing to do. So I really miss the tools they had. I think it was super easy for
Oh, it was
new
so great.
podcasters,
Oh
right?
my goodness, it was so easy.
Yeah.
Even on Anchor, you used to be able to edit the audio right there and
Yeah.
like take a piece away from a section or split it into two sections or get rid of the middle or whatever. It was easy to use.
Yeah.
It was straightforward. And so all of that, I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's worth it to me. I'm to pay somebody to do that
Yeah.
for me.
How are you recording your interviews? What platform are you using? The
Zoom,
Riverside or Zoom? Okay.
Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Good.
Yeah, because he doesn't, again, I asked, and so it's kind of like on the lower tech. I mean, not lower tech, but I don't want to pay somebody to record to edit two tracks.
Yeah.
Like it could be fancier editing. The thing that you lose, of course, is that if you talk over top of someone, you don't hear two people at once, right? But it's like, um, how do I care? Like once in a while, it bugs me when I hear it, but whatever, I'll deal with it. I'll learn to keep my mouth shut when my guest is talking.
Right. Yeah. My wife likes that I'm practicing that, being quiet while she's talking. She's like, that's a great bonus of podcasting. I love that you do that. And the fact that I talk myself out because I talk to so many people during the day. By the time she gets home from work, I'm done. I'm just ready to listen to her, right? She loves it. She's like, this is a big win for our marriage.
Awesome.
So there you
Awesome.
go. For a new podcaster listening, what what kind of advice would you have about launching your show? You've launched now 3 podcasts.
Yeah.
So what have you learned? Like what are you doing different? What would you say to a new podcaster?
I would say keep it simple.
Yeah.
Just get started. It is easier to course correct once you're moving. It's like riding a bike. Like the wheels have to be moving in order for you to turn the steering wheel and go, you don't get the feeling of what it's like until you get going and do it. And like what's the worst thing that can happen? You can delete some old episodes if you really hate them, right?
Yeah.
But just get started. Just do it. Do it in the simplest way possible. For me, that was writing it out and speaking and learning to speak as if I were talking naturally and not reading a script,
Yeah.
making it sound as though I was just talking off the top of my head, but having it in front of me. And I don't have to do that in a conversation. So I know that about myself. Like if I'm recording a conversation, it's not scripted. And if I'm recording one solo, I script. And if you want, you can do some of each the way I'm doing, and stick things in, but just do it whatever is the simplest way for you and get something up and running. And that's how you get to know what you like about it and what parts are bugging you and find another way to do this or whatever that you wouldn't have imagined it before you get going. So just do whatever's simple and get started.
Yeah. Are you a listener of podcasts?
Yeah.
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 So
I
what are you
don't
learning when you listen to podcasts? Anything?
um I'm learning I'm learning what I like to
Yeah.
listen to.
Yeah.
And I'm learning how um people can sound natural and engaging
Mhm.
when they are clearly reading text. Like that was important for me to learn how to present like that. And yeah, because I make podcasts that I like to listen to.
Yeah.
I don't want a 2-hour podcast personally. I know there are people who love it because they have a 2-hour commute to work or whatever, but that's not me. I don't commute at all. I work from home. So if I'm listening to something, it's when I'm out for a walk or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I learned about how to make announcements and how to, like the kind of flow that I like. I listen to a lot of different podcasts and I hear what the intro and the outro sound like and how people do the acknowledgments for producer or music or whatever. And um, uh, so, yeah, I just kind of keep note of of what elements I enjoy in other
Yeah.
people's podcasts so that I can replicate them in my own way without just, I don't want to copy what someone else is doing. I want to take some quality that they have of like reading their material and sounding like they're just being natural. Like I
Yeah.
want to get better and better at that because that's a way that really works for me.
Yeah. Is there anything that when you hit play on a new podcast for the first time, you're like, oh, heck no. And then you hit stop. You're like, that's not what I was expecting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I hear that all the time. I listen to something. I think I'm going to listen to something new and I'm out in 30 seconds. Like,
So what is it that makes you hit stop?
Oh, that's hard. That's hard to identify. It's like when you meet a new person
Yeah.
and you
Okay.
either like them or
Yeah.
you don't like them,
Yeah.
like I don't like the sound of your voice, or
Yeah.
I don't know, I thought this was going to be about something different.
Yeah.
Or it sounds too fakey. I don't want to engage with somebody like that. Yeah, I don't know how to be more. I think it's really like meeting a person and it's a feeling and you feel like you want to listen to what they have to say or you want to listen to the guests that they have. I've listened to podcasts from people who I love. I'm not even going to mention any names, but all of a sudden it was like, I did not think you were going down that road. And I can hardly even listen to this now. Like there's too much anxiety in this topic for me.
Yeah.
Like this is not, what I wanted to hear. So sometimes it's even an episode or a new podcast from a previous podcaster that I really like listening to, and their new thing doesn't suit me the way the old thing did. So
yeah, for me it's the salesman voice that people turn on.
Exactly.
Like, hey everybody, how are you? I'm like, do you talk like that around the dinner table? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Pass the salt. Yeah. Like, I'm like, I don't think you talk like that normally. Like,
No.
you're putting something on there. Like they're trying to be this radio voice or whatever,
exactly.
a persona. And you're like, that's
I'll tell you, it took me a lot of tries to record the intro for this new one.
Really?
Maybe it took a lot of tries before, I don't remember, but I kept hearing that, like, no, that sounds too announcery for me. And then I would do it again, and it's like, now the energy is too low. It's not inviting somebody to come in. And if it's too high, it sounds weird and radio announcery. And if the energy is too low, it's not it's not bringing somebody in towards wanting to be with you. So it took me some time to get that out. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to have to jump off. Yeah, I have another call here.
Excellent. Well, hey, before we go, promote your show. Tell everybody how we can find it.
The show is called Limitless, a space-time alchemy podcast.
Awesome. And we'll have links to that in the show notes. Tracy, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for making time for me. And we'll be listening over here and enjoying it. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast all the way through to the end. I love having these great guest co-hosts on the show to share their podcast with you. You have some homework to do. And what I'm asking of you is to go check out our featured guest co-host today. Go over and listen to their podcasts. The links are always in the show notes. And I'd love for you to go and give them your love and support. And I think if we can all do that for each other, podcasting will be a lot more fun for all of us. So it's time to do what you've asked others to do for you. It's time to do for this guest co-host. Links in the show notes. Go over and check out their show and leave them a review. Do the follow. Go listen to their episodes in full, the entirety of an episode, which again shows to the apps that it's a good podcast because you're going there and you're staying to the end. It's probably one of the best ways you can help a podcaster grow their audience and be shown to more people is by simply going and listening wherever you listen to the very end, like you're doing right now here. This is the perfect way to signal to wherever you're listening on, this is a podcast worth promoting. And all of the apps want you to stay on as long as possible. So go over and listen to our guest co-host episode and leave them some feedback. If they have a buy me a coffee, send them a coffee. If they have a speak pipe, send them a voice message. If they have an email, send them an email. If they're on Instagram, send them a direct message. Do something to support our guest co-hosts. They've given up their time to be here with you, to be here with me, and we can give that back to them with time and attention, our love, our support. Thank you for doing all that for me as well. Here on the How to Podcast series, we'll talk to you soon for our next episode.